Revealed. The shocking truth behind the black maid who destroyed a billionaire's $250,000 medication. What security cameras captured next? Left doctors speechless. The pharmaceutical company tried to silence her. "I was just doing my job," she said before everything changed. This woman's split-second decision exposed a deadly conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of American power. Millionaire businessman now calls her my guardian angel, and what he did for her family will make you cry. The truth they don't want you to know about what really happens in the mansions of America's elite. Full story revealed for the first time. You won't believe the ending. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Westlake, an exclusive gated community nestled in the hills overlooking San Francisco. Luxury cars lined the circular driveways of multi-million-dollar mansions, their windows gleaming like diamonds against the cloudless blue sky. For those who lived here, this was normal. For those who worked here, it was another world entirely. Dorothy Johnson pulled her weathered Toyota Corolla into the service entrance of the largest estate on Hillcrest Drive. At 52, her face bore the lines of someone who had worked hard her entire life, but her eyes remained bright and observant. She checked her appearance in the rearview mirror, adjusting her uniform, a simple navy dress with a white collar, before gathering her things. "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson," said the security guard at the gate, a young man who always greeted her with respect. "Mr. Harrison returned from his trip to Switzerland late last night. The house manager says he's not feeling well." Dorothy nodded. "Thank you, Robert. I'll keep things quiet then." As she made her way through the service entrance and into the vast kitchen, Dorothy mentally prepared herself for another day of invisibility. 15 years she'd been working for the Harrison family, watching them from the periphery of their lives. First for Thomas Harrison Sr., and now for his son, Maxwell Harrison, the tech billionaire whose face regularly graced the covers of business magazines. "Oh, Dorothy, thank God you're here," said Vivian, the house manager, a thin, nervous woman who ran the household with precision. "Mr. Harrison arrived at 3 a.m. and he's in a mood. He's been complaining about his health again. He brought back some new medication from Switzerland that cost a fortune. It's in his bathroom, and he gave strict instructions not to touch it." Dorothy had heard this before. Maxwell Harrison, despite being only 45, was obsessed with his health and longevity. He spent millions on experimental treatments and supplements, convinced that he could outsmart aging and death itself. "Is he up yet?" Dorothy asked, putting on her apron. "No, and let's hope he sleeps till noon. The doctor is coming at 2. Vivian lowered her voice. "The board of directors has been calling all morning. Something about the company's stock dropping." Dorothy simply nodded. She'd learned long ago that the less she appeared to listen, the more she heard. And what she heard often painted a different picture of the Harrison family than the one splashed across social media and business publications. She went about her morning routine, moving quietly through the vast mansion. Each room was immaculately designed, yet somehow felt unlived in, more like a museum than a home. As she dusted the shelves in the main library, she heard Maxwell's voice echo down the hallway, sharp and impatient as he spoke on the phone. "I don't care what the FDA says. I paid $20 million for development. Find a way around it." Dorothy continued her work, moving from room to room until she reached the master suite. Maxwell had already left for his home office on the other side of the mansion. She changed the bedding and began cleaning the expansive bathroom, careful not to disturb the array of prescription bottles lined up on the marble counter. But one package caught her eye, different from the others. A sleek black box with a Swiss pharmacy label, half open, containing glass vials of clear liquid and a set of syringes. Dorothy normally wouldn't give it a second look, but something made her pause. The label was partially torn, but she could make out a warning symbol and chemical formula that seemed strangely familiar. Dorothy had never mentioned to anyone at the Harrison household that before economic hardship had forced her to seek domestic work, she'd been a pharmacy technician for nearly a decade. Her knowledge was outdated now, but she still remembered the basic chemical structures of common medications, and what she saw on this label sent a chill down her spine. The compound looked remarkably similar to a drug that had been pulled from the market years ago after being linked to multiple deaths. She picked up the box carefully, examining it more closely. The packaging was sophisticated, but something wasn't right. A legitimate Swiss pharmaceutical company wouldn't release medication with this compound. She noticed other inconsistencies. The registration number format was wrong, and the safety seal appeared tampered with. As she was studying the box, she heard footsteps approaching. Quickly, she set it back down and continued cleaning. Maxwell Harrison entered the bathroom, his tall frame imposing in the doorway. Despite his wealth, he looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. "Mrs. Johnson, I thought I was clear about not disturbing my personal items," he said, his voice cold. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison. I was just cleaning around them," Dorothy replied, keeping her eyes lowered respectfully. He stepped closer to the counter, picking up the black box. "This medication costs more than you make in 5 years. It's cutting-edge longevity treatment not available in the US. I expect it to be exactly where I left it." "Yes, sir," Dorothy said, continuing to clean as if nothing was amiss. But inside, her mind was racing. Every instinct told her something was wrong with that medication. But what could she, a maid, say to a billionaire about his expensive Swiss drugs? As she left the master suite, she passed Maxwell's personal assistant, a young man named James Chen, who was hurrying in with a stack of folders. "He's in a terrible mood," Dorothy warned quietly. James gave her a grateful look. "Thanks, Mrs. J. The board meeting's been moved up. They're talking about forcing him out after the failed drug trial." This was news to Dorothy. Maxwell's pharmaceutical division had been developing a heart medication, with Maxwell himself touting it as revolutionary. If it had failed, billions in investment would be lost. Throughout the day, the mansion filled with tension as executives came and went from Maxwell's office. Dorothy overheard fragments of heated conversations about stock prices plummeting and shareholders demanding answers. In the evening, as she was finishing her duties, Dorothy passed by Maxwell's private study and overheard him arguing with someone on the phone. "I don't care about the side effects. The FDA is in Big Pharma's pocket anyway. This is my company, and I'll be the first test subject if I want to be." A chill ran down Dorothy's spine. The pieces were starting to fit together in a disturbing way. That night, as she drove home to her modest apartment in Oakland, where she cared for her teenage granddaughter Maya, Dorothy couldn't shake the feeling that Maxwell Harrison was about to do something dangerous, possibly deadly, to himself. Dawn broke with sheets of rain lashing against the windows of Dorothy's small apartment. She sat at her kitchen table, a cup of coffee growing cold between her hands as she stared at her laptop screen. After a mostly sleepless night, she had spent the early morning hours researching the chemical formula she'd memorized from Maxwell's medication. "Grandma, you're going to be late," said Maya, her 17-year-old granddaughter, placing a piece of toast in front of her. Tall and bright like her grandmother, Maya had been under Dorothy's care since her mother, Dorothy's daughter, had died from complications of a drug addiction 5 years ago. "I know, sweetheart," Dorothy replied, closing the laptop. What she had found confirmed her worst fears. The compound was indeed a variant of the banned substance she'd recognized, a so-called longevity drug that had caused kidney failure and death in several patients during clinical trials. "Is everything okay?" Maya asked, concern evident in her young face. She was perceptive, too smart to be fooled by her grandmother's attempt at nonchalance. "Just work stress," Dorothy said, forcing a smile. "Mr. Harrison is hosting some big event tomorrow, and the house needs to be perfect." Maya didn't look convinced, but grabbed her backpack anyway. "I've got debate club after school, so I'll be home late." After Maya left, Dorothy sat in the silence of their small apartment, weighing her options. If she was right about the medication, Maxwell Harrison was in serious danger. But if she was wrong, or if she spoke up, she would certainly lose her job. A job that paid for this apartment, for Maya's college applications, for the stability they'd fought so hard to achieve. The memory of her daughter's death weighed heavily on her. Caroline had been bright and beautiful, with a promising future ahead of her, until prescription painkillers prescribed after a car accident led to addiction and eventually to stronger drugs. By the time Dorothy realized how bad it had gotten, it was too late. She had failed her daughter. She couldn't fail Maya, too. As she drove to work through the rain-slicked streets, Dorothy made her decision. She would find a way to prevent Maxwell from taking the medication without confronting him directly. It was risky, but the alternative was unthinkable. When she arrived at the Harrison estate, the atmosphere was charged with energy. Staff moved purposefully through the mansion, preparing for the next day's event, a private gathering of potential investors for Maxwell's newest venture. "Dorothy, thank goodness," Vivian said as she entered the kitchen. "Mr. Harrison wants everything spotless. The guest list for tomorrow includes 3 senators and half the tech billionaires in California." Throughout the morning, Dorothy cleaned mechanically, her mind elsewhere as she formulated and discarded plans. Her opportunity came shortly before noon, when she overheard Maxwell telling his assistant he was heading to the city for meetings and wouldn't be back until evening. As soon as his car disappeared down the long driveway, Dorothy made her way to the master bathroom. The black box sat exactly where it had been yesterday. With trembling hands, she opened it and examined the vials inside. "What are you doing?" Dorothy nearly dropped the box at the sound of James Chen's voice. The personal assistant stood in the doorway, his expression a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "James," Dorothy said, her heart pounding, "I need to talk to you about something important." "You shouldn't be touching Mr. Harrison's personal items," James said, stepping into the bathroom. "That's grounds for dismissal, and you know it." Dorothy made a split-second decision. "I used to be a pharmacy tech. This medication, it's not what Mr. Harrison thinks it is. The formula is similar to Renoxivar B, which was banned after it killed people in clinical trials." James's professional mask slipped, revealing concern. At 32, he had worked for Maxwell for only 3 years, but Dorothy had noticed his intelligence and integrity. "How can you be sure?" he asked, lowering his voice. "I recognize the chemical structure on the label," Dorothy explained. "I researched it last night. This variant has been linked to black market anti-aging clinics in Europe. It's dangerous, possibly lethal." James ran a hand through his hair, visibly torn. "Mr. Harrison's been making some erratic decisions lately. The company's in trouble after the heart drug trial failed. He invested his personal fortune into it. He mentioned being a test subject himself," Dorothy said. "I think he's desperate enough to take untested drugs." "If you're right," James said slowly, "and he takes this, what could happen?" "Kidney failure, heart arrhythmia, death," Dorothy said bluntly. "And if I'm wrong, I lose my job, which I cannot afford to lose." James was quiet for a long moment. "The security cameras," he finally said. "There's one in this room in the corner by the ceiling. It records everything." Dorothy's heart sank. She hadn't considered the cameras. "But," James continued, "there's a 20-minute maintenance window during system updates every day at 3 p.m., no recording." Their eyes met in silent understanding. "I never had this conversation with you," James said, backing toward the door. "And, Dorothy, be careful." At exactly 3 p.m., Dorothy returned to the master bathroom with a small trash bag. With efficiency born from years of cleaning, she quickly removed the vials from the black box, wrapped them in tissue, and placed them in the bag. Then, from her pocket, she took several empty vials she had cleaned and saved from the kitchen's recycling bin and arranged them in the box, closing it carefully and placing it exactly as it had been. She tied the trash bag and added it to her cleaning cart, her heart hammering in her chest as she continued her rounds through the mansion. At the end of her shift, she took the bag with her other collected trash and disposed of it in the large bins behind the kitchen. As she drove home that evening, adrenaline still coursing through her body, Dorothy prayed she had made the right choice. If she was wrong about the medication, she had just thrown away hundreds of thousands of dollars of legitimate treatment and likely ended her employment when it was discovered. If she was right, she might have saved Maxwell Harrison's life, but at what cost to herself? The magnitude of what she had done hit her fully as she arrived home. Maya was at the kitchen table, surrounded by college application forms and scholarship essays. "How was work?" Maya asked absently, focused on her writing. Dorothy looked at her granddaughter, this bright young woman with a future full of promise, and thought about how everything they had worked for might come crashing down. "Just another day," she said quietly, hoping it wasn't the last normal day they would have. The next morning broke clear and crisp, a stark contrast to the storm of anxiety brewing inside Dorothy as she drove to work. She had barely slept, her mind cycling through worst-case scenarios, being confronted, fired, possibly even arrested for theft or destruction of property. As she passed through security, Robert the guard gave her his usual friendly nod, a small reassurance that nothing had changed, yet. The Harrison mansion was already buzzing with activity. Caterers and event staff moved efficiently through the spaces, preparing for the evening's gathering. Dorothy slipped into the routine, focusing on her tasks with deliberate care, avoiding the master suite for as long as possible. "Dorothy, there you are!" Vivian called, intercepting her in the hallway. "Mr. Harrison asked specifically for you to clean his office and bedroom before the event. He mentioned something about you being the only one who gets the details right." Dorothy's stomach clenched. Was this a trap or simply routine? Of course, she said, keeping her voice steady. I'll head there now. As she approached the master suite, Dorothy steeled herself. The door to Maxwell's bedroom was ajar, and she could hear his voice inside, angry, agitated. What do you mean, altered? I paid $12 million for exclusive rights to that formula. If they've watered it down... Dorothy knocked softly on the door frame. Maxwell looked up sharply, his face flushed with anger as he ended his call. Mrs. Johnson, he said, his tone clipped. Come in. She entered the room, keeping her eyes lowered as she set down her cleaning supplies. Maxwell remained standing by the window, watching her with an intensity that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. I need to speak with you about something, he said. A matter of some delicacy. This was it, Dorothy thought. He knows. My medication, Maxwell continued, moving toward the bathroom. The new treatment from Switzerland. Dorothy followed him, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. In the bathroom, Maxwell picked up the black box from the counter, turning it over in his hands. I received some disturbing information this morning, he said. The supplier contacted me with concerns about the batch they sent. Apparently there may have been contamination in some vials. They've recommended I dispose of it immediately. Dorothy stood frozen, unable to process what she was hearing. Maxwell set the box down and turned to face her fully. You cleaned in here yesterday. Did you notice anything unusual about this package? Any damage or leakage? Finding her voice at last, Dorothy replied, No, sir. Nothing obvious. Maxwell studied her face for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. That will be all for now. Please ensure the guest rooms are prepared for tonight. Dorothy nodded and gathered her supplies, hardly daring to breathe until she was safely in the hallway. As she rounded the corner, she nearly collided with James. Everything okay? He asked quietly, glancing over his shoulder to ensure they were alone. I think so, Dorothy whispered. He asked about the medication, but he said the supplier called with concerns about contamination. James's expression remained carefully neutral. The event starts at 7. Mr. Harrison has been taking calls in his office all morning, pharmaceutical contacts mostly. Before Dorothy could respond, Vivian appeared at the end of the hallway, and James smoothly stepped away, resuming his professional demeanor. Throughout the day, Dorothy continued her duties, the knot of anxiety in her stomach gradually easing. By evening, as guests began to arrive in their luxury vehicles, she had almost convinced herself that the crisis had passed. She was placing fresh towels in one of the guest bathrooms when she heard Maxwell's voice from the adjoining bedroom. I don't care what your tests showed. I had it independently verified before I left Switzerland. That formula was exactly what I paid for. Dorothy froze, listening. Someone tampered with it after it arrived here, Maxwell continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous tone. And I'm going to find out who. Dorothy's relief evaporated. She quietly finished her task and slipped out of the room, avoiding the growing crowd of wealthy guests now filling the main floor. As she passed the security office, she noticed several guards reviewing footage on multiple screens. One screen showed the master bathroom from the previous day. Her blood ran cold. Mrs. Johnson, called the head of security, a former military man named Victor. Just the person I wanted to see. Dorothy approached slowly, fighting to keep her expression neutral. Yes? Mr. Harrison has asked us to review all footage from his private quarters for the past 48 hours, Victor explained, gesturing to the screens. Standard procedure when he's hosting high-profile guests. Did you notice anyone unauthorized in those areas during your cleaning rounds? No, Dorothy said, her mouth dry. No one. Victor nodded. If you do see anyone who shouldn't be there, let us know immediately. Dorothy continued her evening duties, moving through the service areas of the mansion as the party reached full swing. Champagne flowed freely as Maxwell charmed investors and politicians, appearing every bit the confident billionaire. Only Dorothy noticed the slight tremor in his hand as he raised his glass, the sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the carefully controlled temperature. Shortly after 9, as she was refreshing linens in the pool house, Dorothy's phone vibrated with a text from Maya. Got the call back for the scholarship interview. The message hit Dorothy like a physical blow. Everything they had worked for, Maya's future, hung in the balance because of the choice she had made. She leaned against the wall, suddenly overwhelmed. A noise at the pool house door made her look up. James stood there, his expression grim. They're reviewing the security footage right now, he said without preamble. There's a problem with the system update time frame yesterday. The cameras were only down for 8 minutes, not 20. Dorothy felt the blood drain from her face. What does that mean? It means there's 12 minutes of footage they're looking at very closely, James said. I've tried to delay them, but Victor's thorough. What should I do? Dorothy asked, fear threatening to choke her. Keep working normally, James advised. Don't do anything that looks suspicious. I'll try to find out more. As James left, Dorothy's phone buzzed again with another text from Maya. Can we celebrate when you get home? Love you, Grandma. With trembling hands, Dorothy replied, so proud of you, yes, we'll celebrate. She fought back tears as she wondered whether she'd still have a job by morning, or worse, whether she'd be facing criminal charges. The evening wore on, the glittering party a surreal contrast to Dorothy's inner turmoil. As she was collecting discarded cocktail napkins from the terrace, she overheard a conversation between Maxwell and a distinguished older man. The FDA won't budge, Max, the man was saying. After what happened with the trial deaths, they're scrutinizing everything coming out of Harrison Pharmaceuticals. The trial results were manipulated, Maxwell insisted. Someone wants to see me fail. The board meeting tomorrow isn't going to be pleasant, the older man warned. Collins' faction has the votes to remove you as CEO if you don't show them something concrete. I have something better than concrete, Maxwell replied. I have proof that the drug works. By tomorrow morning, I'll have what I need to silence all of them. Dorothy moved away, her mind racing. Maxwell was planning to take the medication, the fake vials she had planted tonight, as some kind of proof to save his position at the company. As the party began to wind down near midnight, Dorothy was summoned to the kitchen where Vivian waited, her expression severe. Mr. Harrison wants to see you in his office, she said. Immediately. Dorothy nodded, removing her apron with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. As she made her way to Maxwell's private office, she passed James in the hallway. They found something on the cameras, he whispered urgently. Be careful. The walk to Maxwell's office felt like the longest of her life. Through the windows, she could see the last guests departing, their drivers waiting with sleek cars on the circular driveway. The mansion would soon be quiet, with only security and a few staff remaining overnight. Maxwell's office door was open. He sat behind his massive desk, the black box containing the fake medication sitting in front of him. Victor stood nearby, his posture rigid. Mrs. Johnson, Maxwell said as she entered. Thank you for coming. Please close the door. Dorothy did as instructed, then stood with her hands clasped in front of her, waiting. I've been reviewing security footage from yesterday, Maxwell began, his voice deceptively calm. There's a 12-minute period where you're seen entering my bathroom with your cleaning supplies. When you leave, something has changed. He opened the black box and removed one of the vials Dorothy had substituted. These are not the vials that were delivered from Switzerland. Dorothy remained silent, her mind racing for some explanation, some way out. What I find most interesting, Maxwell continued, is that 8 minutes of footage is missing entirely during that time period. A convenient system update, I'm told. He leaned forward, his eyes hard. What did you do with my medication, Mrs. Johnson? Dorothy took a deep breath. Lying further would only make things worse. I disposed of it, Mr. Harrison. Maxwell's expression flickered with surprise, perhaps at her honesty. Why? Because it would have killed you, Dorothy said simply. The compound was Renoxivar B, or a close variant. It was pulled from the market 5 years ago after causing multiple deaths in clinical trials. Maxwell exchanged a glance with Victor, who shifted uncomfortably. And you, a housekeeper, recognized a complex pharmaceutical compound? Maxwell asked, skepticism evident in his voice. I was a pharmacy technician for 9 years before economic circumstances forced me to seek other employment, Dorothy explained. I still remember the basic structures of dangerous drugs. Maxwell was silent for a moment, studying her with new interest. That still doesn't give you the right to make decisions about my health or my property. No, sir, it doesn't, Dorothy acknowledged. I made a choice I felt was necessary to prevent harm. I accept the consequences. The medication cost $250,000, Maxwell said flatly. Dorothy felt faint. The amount was more money than she could hope to see in years. I understand, sir. I will do whatever I can to make restitution. Maxwell leaned back in his chair, still watching her intently. Victor, please give us the room. The security chief hesitated. Sir, given the circumstances... It's fine, Maxwell interrupted. I'd like to speak with Mrs. Johnson alone. Once Victor had left, closing the door behind him, Maxwell's demeanor changed subtly. He looked tired, the confident billionaire facade cracking to reveal something more human beneath. "You've worked for my family for 15 years, he said. "My father always spoke highly of your discretion and integrity." Dorothy remained silent, uncertain where this was leading. "I could have you arrested for theft," Maxwell continued. "At minimum, your employment here is terminated, effective immediately." Dorothy closed her eyes briefly, thinking of Maya's college dreams crumbling. "I understand. However," Maxwell said, standing up from his desk, "before I make that decision final, there's something I'd like to show you." He walked to a wall safe concealed behind a painting and opened it, removing a folder which he placed on the desk between them. "After you left yesterday, I had the medication you disposed of tested by my private lab," he said. "These are the results." Dorothy looked down at the report, her eyes widening as she read. The substance in the vials had indeed been a variant of Renoxivar B, combined with other compounds to mask its signature effects. "According to my lab," Maxwell said quietly, "if I had taken this as directed, I would have experienced kidney failure within 48 hours. Death would have followed in less than a week." Dorothy looked up, meeting his gaze. "You knew?" "I suspected," Maxwell corrected. "The supplier's credentials didn't check out upon deeper investigation, but I needed proof before I made accusations." "So the call about contamination—" "A test," Maxwell confirmed, "to see your reaction." Dorothy felt a complex mix of emotions: relief that her assessment had been correct, anger at being manipulated, and lingering fear about her future. "What happens now?" she asked. Maxwell returned to his seat. "That depends on how you answer my next question. How did you know the system update would affect the security cameras?" And with that simple query, Dorothy realized that her attempt to protect Maya's future might have just destroyed it. Dorothy's mind raced. James had helped her, and now Maxwell was fishing for his identity. She couldn't betray him. He had a young family, a promising career. But she couldn't lie convincingly either, not with Maxwell watching her so intently. "I made an educated guess," she said finally. "The cameras in the service areas go down briefly at the same time every day for updates. I assumed it might be a house-wide system." Maxwell's expression remained skeptical. "That's quite a risk to take based on an assumption." "I felt the risk was warranted," Dorothy replied simply. "I believed you were in danger." Maxwell studied her for a long moment, then surprised her by changing direction. "Tell me about your background. You mentioned you were a pharmacy technician." Cautiously, Dorothy explained her previous career at Oakland Medical Center, her training, and how the 2008 financial crisis had cost her that position when the hospital downsized, how she'd taken domestic work to support her daughter and later her granddaughter. As she spoke, Maxwell pulled up something on his computer screen, occasionally glancing at it. "Caroline Johnson," he said suddenly. "Your daughter?" Dorothy froze. "Yes. She passed away 5 years ago. Overdose. You have custody of her daughter, Maya, who's now 17. Maxwell wasn't asking questions. He was stating facts from whatever he was reading. "Maya has applied to 7 colleges, including Stanford and Berkeley. Excellent grades, particularly in science and debate." "How do you know all this?" Dorothy asked, unsettled. "I had you thoroughly vetted before tonight's conversation," Maxwell replied matter-of-factly. "I make it a point to know exactly who I'm dealing with." He turned the computer screen so she could see it, a comprehensive background report on her life, including financial records, family history, even Maya's recent scholarship applications. "What do you want, Mr. Harrison?" Dorothy asked directly, her patience wearing thin despite her precarious position. Maxwell leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "Someone tried to kill me, Mrs. Johnson. Someone with access to my contacts, my schedule, and my private quarters. Someone who knew I was desperate enough to try an experimental treatment after the FDA rejected my company's heart drug." "I don't understand what this has to do with me," Dorothy said. "You're uniquely positioned to help me find out who it is," Maxwell explained. "You move through this house virtually unseen. People speak freely around you, staff, visitors, even my business associates, and you clearly notice things others miss." Dorothy shook her head. "I'm just a housekeeper. A housekeeper with pharmaceutical knowledge who was willing to risk her job to prevent what she perceived as danger," Maxwell countered. "That's precisely the person I need right now." He stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the moonlit grounds. "I'm offering you a choice, Mrs. Johnson. Option 1, Immediate termination, with the likelihood of criminal charges for destruction of property valued at $250,000. Dorothy's heart sank. There would be no recovering from that. Option 2, Maxwell continued, turning back to face her. You continue working here with a significant raise. Your official duties remain the same, but you'll also report directly to me about anything unusual you notice. Conversations, visitors, behavior changes in staff. You'll be my eyes and ears in areas where I can't see. You want me to spy for you, Dorothy stated flatly. I prefer to think of it as enhanced security consultation, Maxwell replied, with a hint of a smile that didn't reach his eyes. In return, I'm prepared to offer financial security for both you and Maya. Dorothy remained silent, processing the implications. The idea of reporting on her co-workers, many of whom she'd known for years, felt deeply uncomfortable. Yet the alternative meant ruining Maya's future. How significant a raise? She asked finally. Double your current salary effective immediately, Maxwell said, plus a signing bonus of $50,000, which should cover Maya's first year at whichever college accepts her. Dorothy couldn't hide her shock at the figure. It was more money than she'd ever had at once. And when this investigation is complete, she asked. If your information leads to identifying whoever is behind this attempt, Maxwell said, there will be a final bonus of $250,000, the exact value of the medication you destroyed. The sum was life-changing, enough to pay for Maya's entire education, to secure their future, but it came with serious ethical concerns. I need time to think, Dorothy said. Unfortunately, time is a luxury I don't have, Maxwell replied. The board meets tomorrow afternoon. I need your answer now. Dorothy thought of Maya, brilliant and deserving, whose future hung in the balance. She thought of her daughter Caroline, whose potential had been cut tragically short. She couldn't fail another generation. I'll do it, she said quietly. But I have conditions. Maxwell raised an eyebrow, clearly not accustomed to being given conditions. Go on. I won't fabricate information or accusations. I report only what I actually observe, Dorothy stated firmly. And I won't wear any recording devices or use any technology I'm not comfortable with. Agreed, Maxwell said without hesitation. One more thing, Dorothy added. When this is over, regardless of the outcome, I want a letter of recommendation and assistance finding a position more aligned with my pharmaceutical background. Maxwell considered this for a moment, then nodded. That can be arranged. Do we have a deal? Dorothy took a deep breath, then extended her hand. We do, Mr. Harrison. They shook hands, the billionaire and the housekeeper, an unlikely alliance formed in the quiet hours after midnight. Get some rest, Mrs. Johnson, Maxwell said. Tomorrow we begin in earnest. As Dorothy drove home in the early morning hours, streetlights casting intermittent shadows across her face, she felt a complex mixture of relief, uncertainty, and resolve. She had saved her job and secured Maya's college future, but at what cost? When she arrived home, she found Maya asleep on the couch, college brochures spread around her. Dorothy gently covered her with a blanket, watching her granddaughter's peaceful face for a moment. I'm going to make sure you have the chances your mother never got, she whispered, no matter what it takes. But as she finally lay in her own bed, staring at the ceiling, Dorothy couldn't shake the feeling that she had just made a deal with a devil she didn't fully understand, and that the consequences might reach far beyond what either she or Maxwell Harrison could anticipate. Dorothy arrived at the Harrison estate earlier than usual the next morning, the mansion still quiet in the pale dawn light. She had slept little, her mind replaying her conversation with Maxwell and analyzing potential consequences of their arrangement. To her surprise, James Chen was waiting for her at the service entrance, looking as tired as she felt. You're still here, he said with evident relief. I thought for sure. So did I, Dorothy admitted, lowering her voice though no one else was around. Mr. Harrison knows the medication was dangerous. He had it tested after I disposed of it. James's eyes widened. And he didn't fire you? It's complicated, Dorothy said carefully. She trusted James, but Maxwell's warning about a potential insider threat made her cautious about revealing too much. He appreciated that I potentially saved his life. Before James could respond, Vivian appeared, clipboard in hand and looking harried. There you both are. Mr. Harrison called an emergency staff meeting in the kitchen. Now. Dorothy and James exchanged concerned glances before following Vivian through the house. In the spacious kitchen, the entire household staff had gathered, nearly 20 people including security, groundskeepers, kitchen staff, and other cleaners. Maxwell stood at the center of the room, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit despite the early hour. Beside him stood Colin Winters, the CFO of Harrison Pharmaceuticals and a regular visitor to the mansion. Dorothy had always found Colin unsettling, in his mid-50s with cold eyes that calculated everyone's value in a glance. Rumors among the staff suggested he and Maxwell had been locked in a power struggle for months. "Thank you all for coming," Maxwell began, his voice carrying easily through the space. "In light of recent events, we're implementing enhanced security protocols at the estate." A murmur ran through the assembled staff. "Effective immediately. All personal items will be subject to search when entering and leaving the premises," Maxwell continued. "New security cameras are being installed today, and certain areas of the house will now require keycard access." The announcement was met with looks of confusion and concern. Such measures were unprecedented. "Additionally," Maxwell added, "Mr. Winters will be staying at the estate for the foreseeable future. As my second-in-command, he'll need full access to continue our work during this critical period." Colin Winters stepped forward, his thin smile not reaching his eyes. "I appreciate your cooperation during this transitional time. Harrison Pharmaceuticals is facing significant challenges, and Maxwell and I need a secure environment to address them." Dorothy observed the subtle power dynamics at play. Though Colin spoke as Maxwell's ally, there was tension in how they stood, slightly apart, neither looking directly at the other. "One last thing," Maxwell said. "There was an incident last night involving unauthorized access to my personal items. While the matter has been resolved, I want to be clear. Any staff member found in restricted areas without explicit permission will be terminated immediately. No exceptions." His gaze swept the room but lingered almost imperceptibly on Dorothy before he concluded the meeting and dismissed the staff. As everyone dispersed, Colin approached Dorothy. "Mrs. Johnson, isn't it?" he said, his voice smooth. "I believe you'll be handling the guest suite where I'll be staying." "Yes, sir," Dorothy replied with practiced deference. "I'll make sure it's prepared to your preferences." "Excellent," he said, studying her with unexpected intensity. "Maxwell speaks highly of your attention to detail. I look forward to experiencing it firsthand." As Colin walked away to join Maxwell, James whispered to Dorothy, "That was weird. He never notices housekeeping staff." "Everyone's acting strangely today," Dorothy murmured, watching as Maxwell and Colin exited deep in conversation. "Keep your head down." Throughout the morning, Dorothy went about her usual cleaning routine while taking careful note of anything unusual. The promised security upgrades were already underway, with technicians installing new cameras and electronic locks on several doors. While cleaning the main floor study, Dorothy overheard Colin on the phone, his voice low but intense. "The board meeting's at 3. If Harrison doesn't produce results today, we have the votes to remove him. No, he doesn't suspect anything. Trust me, by this time tomorrow, I'll be acting CEO, and you'll have what you need." Dorothy continued dusting, keeping her movements slow and regular as though she hadn't heard a thing. Colin ended his call abruptly when another staff member passed the open door. Later, while refreshing the flowers in the entrance hall, Dorothy observed James escorting a visitor through the house, a woman she recognized as Dr. Eliza Sharma, the research director at Harrison Pharmaceuticals. Instead of taking her to Maxwell's office, James led Dr. Sharma to the rarely used library, where Colin was waiting. The door closed behind them, but Dorothy noticed it didn't latch properly. Positioning herself to water the plants near the library entrance, she could hear fragments of their conversation. "Test results were altered," Dr. Sharma was saying, her voice tense. "The heart drug wasn't responsible for those patient deaths." "Do you have proof?" Colin asked. "I found discrepancies in the trial data," Dr. Sharma replied. "Key patient files were modified after the FDA inspection began. Someone wanted the trial to fail." "These are serious accusations, Eliza." Colin's voice had a warning edge. "Making them public without absolute proof would be career suicide." "That's why I came to you first," Dr. Sharma said. "As CFO, you can authorize a full internal investigation without alerting whoever's behind this." A long pause followed. "Let me consider the best approach," Colin finally responded. "In the meantime, keep this between us. Maxwell's judgment has been erratic lately. Let's not burden him until we're certain." As footsteps approached the door, Dorothy quickly moved away, continuing her work in an adjacent room. Dr. Sharma left shortly afterward, looking troubled, while Colin remained in the library making another phone call Dorothy couldn't overhear. By midday, the mansion buzzed with preparation for the afternoon board meeting, which would take place in Harrison Pharmaceuticals' downtown headquarters. Dorothy kept to her routine, gathering information while avoiding attention. As she was cleaning Maxwell's private study during his lunch meeting with investors, she noticed a file left open on his desk, medical reports on the tainted Swiss medication she had disposed of. Checking that she was truly alone, Dorothy quickly scanned the documents. The lab analysis was even more alarming than she'd initially suspected. The drug contained not just Renoxivar B, but a cocktail of dangerous compounds, precisely calibrated to mimic improvement at first, followed by sudden catastrophic organ failure that would appear natural in someone with Maxwell's medical history of heart problems. A note at the bottom of the report caught her attention. Chemical profile matches sample HF237 from failed heart flow trial. Dorothy quickly photographed the report with her phone before returning everything exactly as she'd found it. The connection to the failed drug trial couldn't be coincidence. Later, while preparing Colin's guest suite, Dorothy carefully examined his belongings as she unpacked them, a task Vivian had assigned her at Colin's specific request. Among his meticulously organized items, she found prescription medication for hypertension and anxiety, business documents, and an expensive leather planner. As she arranged his toiletries in the bathroom, she noticed a small, unmarked pill case hidden beneath his shaving kit. Professional curiosity made her examine it closer. Inside were tablets she recognized as powerful sleeping pills, much stronger than the over-the-counter variety. Downstairs, she heard Maxwell's voice as he prepared to leave for the board meeting. Dorothy quickly finished her task and made her way to the kitchen, where she found James looking anxious. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly, as they both watched through the window as Maxwell and Colin departed in separate cars. "Not really," James admitted. "The company stock dropped another 15% this morning. The board meeting could get ugly." "Do you think they'll really remove him as CEO?" Dorothy asked. James shrugged helplessly. "If they do, Colin takes over. He's been positioning himself for months." As the afternoon wore on, the mansion grew quieter. Most senior staff had accompanied Maxwell to the board meeting, leaving only essential personnel behind. Dorothy used the opportunity to explore areas that would normally be off-limits. In the East Wing, she noticed a light under the door of the rarely used home theater. Approaching quietly, she heard voices inside. Victor, the head of security, speaking with someone whose voice she didn't recognize. "The new cameras are installed in all the locations you specified," Victor was saying, "and I've reassigned the overnight security team as requested." "Good," the unknown voice replied. "And the access logs?" "Wiped clean, like we discussed. No one will know the system was accessed." Dorothy moved away silently, her unease growing. Victor had been with the Harrison family for nearly 2 decades, trusted implicitly by Maxwell. If he was involved in something suspicious. By evening, tension filled the mansion as news filtered back from the board meeting. Maxwell had apparently presented new evidence regarding the failed drug trial, requesting an emergency internal investigation. The board had granted him 72 hours to produce conclusive proof before voting on his leadership. When Maxwell returned, he summoned Dorothy to his office, locking the door once she entered. "Tell me what you observed today," he said without preamble, looking exhausted but intensely focused. Dorothy reported everything methodically: Colin's phone conversation, the meeting with Dr. Sharma, Victor's suspicious activity, and the matching chemical profiles between the Swiss medication and the failed heart drug. Maxwell listened without interruption, taking notes occasionally. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "This confirms my suspicions," he said. "Someone deliberately sabotaged the heart flow trial, costing the company billions and nearly destroying my reputation. The same person tried to kill me with that Swiss medication to prevent me from discovering the truth." "Do you think it's Colin?" Dorothy asked. "He's the obvious suspect," Maxwell acknowledged. "But it feels too obvious. Colin's ambitious, certainly, but he's not stupid. The sabotage required access to our secure labs and deep pharmaceutical knowledge." "Dr. Sharma seemed genuinely concerned about the altered test results," Dorothy pointed out. Maxwell nodded. "Eliza's been with me since the beginning. I trust her, but I need to verify her information before acting." He stood up, pacing the room. The board meeting bought me some time, but not much. I need concrete proof within 72 hours. What can I do? Dorothy asked. Tonight, Colin is hosting several board members for drinks here at the mansion, a subtle power play while he's staying under my roof, Maxwell explained with a grim smile. I need you to observe who he speaks with, what they discuss. Pay particular attention to anyone who arrives or leaves separately from the others. And Victor, Dorothy asked, if security is compromised, say nothing to him, Maxwell instructed. Act normally. I'll handle that situation separately. As Dorothy turned to leave, Maxwell added, Mrs. Johnson, Dorothy, be careful. We don't yet know how far this conspiracy extends or what's truly at stake. Your safety is important. The genuine concern in his voice surprised her. I will, she promised. That evening, as Colin's guests began to arrive, Dorothy moved efficiently through the mansion, invisible in her uniform as she served drinks and cleared glasses. The gathering included 3 board members, Dr. Sharma, and 2 executives Dorothy didn't recognize. The conversation remained superficially cordial, with pointed undercurrents Dorothy caught as she circulated among them. Maxwell's evidence was compelling, one board member was saying to Colin. If the trial data was truly manipulated, let's wait for the investigation before jumping to conclusions, Colin replied smoothly. Remember, Maxwell's under enormous pressure. He's desperate to salvage the situation. Later, as Dorothy was refreshing ice in the bar area, she overheard Dr. Sharma confronting Colin in a quiet corner. You said you'd look into the data discrepancies, she said, her voice tense. Instead, you told the board Maxwell was making unfounded accusations. I'm protecting you, Eliza, Colin replied. Publicly challenging the trial results without conclusive proof would destroy your career and possibly the company. This isn't about careers, Dr. Sharma insisted. If Heartflow was sabotaged, people died unnecessarily. That drug could have saved lives. Keep your voice down, Colin hissed. We'll discuss this tomorrow at the lab. As the evening progressed, Dorothy noticed one guest who remained separate from the others. A stern woman introduced only as Ms. Reed, who spoke little but observed everything. When she left early, Colin walked her to her car privately. Dorothy managed to position herself near an open window where she could hear their parting conversation. 72 hours changes nothing, Ms. Reed was saying. The plan proceeds as discussed. Harrison is more resourceful than we anticipated, Colin replied. He's already connecting dots we thought well hidden. Then accelerate the timeline, Ms. Reed said coldly. By this time tomorrow, it needs to be done. The investors won't wait. As Ms. Reed's car pulled away, Colin stood watching for a long moment, his expression impossible to read in the darkness. When he turned to re-enter the house, Dorothy caught a glimpse of his face, not triumphant, as she might have expected, but troubled, almost afraid. Later that night, after reporting everything to Maxwell and returning home, Dorothy sat at her kitchen table, examining the photo she'd taken of the lab report. The technical language was mostly familiar to her, but one detail stood out, a reference to external oversight from Meridian Global. On a hunch, she searched for Meridian Global online, finding it was a multinational pharmaceutical conglomerate that had recently attempted to acquire Harrison Pharmaceuticals before Maxwell blocked the takeover. Further searching revealed Ms. Reed's full identity, Catherine Reed, Chief Strategy Officer at Meridian Global. As the pieces began falling into place, Dorothy felt a chill of realization. This wasn't just about control of Harrison Pharmaceuticals or Maxwell's position as CEO. Something much larger was at stake, something worth killing for. She immediately texted Maxwell with her discovery about Meridian Global and Ms. Reed. His response came seconds later. Do not return to the mansion tomorrow. Wait for my call. The urgency in his message confirmed her fears. Whatever was happening was accelerating, and the danger was growing by the hour. As she checked on Maya, sleeping peacefully with college acceptance letters on her nightstand, Dorothy wondered if she had unknowingly placed them both in the crosshairs of something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Dawn broke with sheets of rain pounding against the windows of Dorothy's apartment. She had barely slept, her mind racing with connections and possibilities, the gravity of her situation becoming increasingly clear with each passing hour. Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway, wrapped in a robe and looking concerned. Grandma, aren't you going to work? It's almost 7. Dorothy managed a calm smile. Mr. Harrison gave me the morning off. Something about renovations happening in the main house. The lie came easily, protecting Maya from worries she shouldn't have to carry. Dorothy had already decided she wouldn't mention the danger or the deal she'd made with Maxwell. Maya's focus needed to remain on her future, not her grandmother's precarious present. Great, Maya brightened. Then you can help me decide which college financial aid package is better. I've narrowed it down to Stanford and Berkeley. For the next hour, Dorothy immersed herself in the wonderful normalcy of helping her granddaughter plan for a future that now seemed possible. The $50,000 signing bonus Maxwell had promised would change everything for them, assuming she survived the next 72 hours to receive it. As Maya left for school, Dorothy's phone rang. James Chen. "Dorothy," he said without greeting, his voice tight with stress. "Where are you?" "At home," she replied, instantly alert. "Mr. Harrison told me not to come in today." "Thank God," James exhaled. "Listen carefully. Something's happening at the mansion. Collins called an emergency press conference for noon today. Security's been doubled, and no regular staff are being allowed into Maxwell's private areas." "Where is Maxwell?" Dorothy asked, her concern mounting. "That's just it," James said, lowering his voice further. "No one's seen him since late last night. He missed a critical investor call this morning and his car is still here. Dorothy, I think he might be—" He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Dorothy felt a cold knot of dread forming in her stomach. "What about the evidence from the board meeting?" she asked. "The investigation into the drug trial?" Colin announced to the senior staff that the evidence was fabricated, a desperate attempt by Maxwell to save his position. "He's saying Maxwell had a breakdown and will be taking a medical leave of absence, effective immediately." "That's not possible," Dorothy insisted. "I saw the lab report myself. The medication was tampered with and it matched samples from the failed trial." There was a long pause on the line. "Dorothy, be careful who you say that to. Colin's already got most of the board convinced Maxwell's been making irrational decisions. Anyone defending him is being sidelined." "What about Dr. Sharma? She knew about the data discrepancies." "Called away suddenly on a family emergency this morning," James replied grimly. "Her assistant said she left the city before dawn." The implications were clear. Someone was systematically removing anyone who could verify Maxwell's claims. "James, I need to get into the mansion," Dorothy said, making a quick decision. "Can you help me?" "Are you crazy? It's not safe." "Maxwell may be in danger," Dorothy cut him off. "Maybe worse. I need to check his private rooms. The regular security team knows me. They'll let me in to clean." "Not today, they won't," James countered. "Victor replaced the usual team with new people I've never seen before. They're checking ID against a special clearance list," Dorothy thought quickly. "The service tunnel from the pool house. Does it still connect to the main cellar?" "Yes, but it's been unused for years," James said. "And you'd still need to get past the ground security." "The gardeners deliver every Thursday morning," Dorothy said, glancing at the calendar. "Their truck will be arriving within the hour. If you can meet me at the service gate—" James was quiet for a moment. "This is insane. Why are you willing to risk so much for Maxwell Harrison? He's just your employer." Dorothy thought of Maya's college acceptance letters, of Maxwell's unexpected trust in her, of the lives potentially lost if the truth about the heart drug never emerged. "Because it's the right thing to do," she said simply. "Oh, will you help me?" Another pause, then, "Be at the southwest service entrance in 45 minutes. Wear gardening clothes if you have them. I'll do what I can." Exactly 45 minutes later, Dorothy approached the service entrance to the Harrison estate, dressed in muddy jeans and a dark raincoat, a gardening hat pulled low over her face. The rain provided perfect cover, reducing visibility and keeping security personnel in their shelters rather than patrolling actively. As promised, the gardening service truck was at the checkpoint, the driver arguing with a security guard about his delivery schedule. Dorothy spotted James waiting just inside the gate, pretending to check a clipboard. As the guard stepped into his booth to verify the delivery, James quickly motioned her forward. She slipped through the open gate, keeping her head down and falling into step beside James as though she belonged. "Security cameras?" she whispered as they walked briskly toward the greenhouse area. "Reconfigured yesterday," James replied quietly. "There's a blind spot behind the pool house we can use to access the service tunnel." They moved carefully across the grounds, the rain masking their progress. Once behind the pool house, James revealed a half-hidden door partially overgrown with ivy. "This hasn't been used in years," he said, pulling it open with effort. The tunnel was built during Prohibition to move liquor into the main house discreetly. It should take you directly to the wine cellar. The passage was dark and musty, cobwebs brushing Dorothy's face as she ducked inside. James handed her a flashlight. "Once you're in, head to the north wing. That's where Maxwell's private rooms are located. I'll create a distraction in the main house in exactly 15 minutes to draw security away temporarily." Dorothy nodded, suddenly uncertain. "If Maxwell isn't there, then get out immediately," James said firmly. "This press conference at noon is significant. Whatever's happening is coming to a head today." "Thank you, James," Dorothy said sincerely. He shook his head. "Just be careful. And Dorothy, if things go wrong, I never saw you today." The tunnel was longer than Dorothy had expected, sloping gently downward before rising again toward the main house. After several minutes of careful progress, she reached another door, this one metal and surprisingly well-maintained. It opened into a corner of the wine cellar, currently empty of staff. Dorothy oriented herself. She was in the oldest part of the mansion, 2 floors below Maxwell's private suite. Checking her watch, she saw she had 12 minutes before James's distraction. Moving carefully through the cellar, she reached the service stairs and began her ascent, pausing at each landing to listen for activity. The mansion seemed unnaturally quiet for mid-morning, the usual bustle of staff absent. On the main floor, she glimpsed unfamiliar security personnel patrolling the hallways, men in dark suits rather than the regular uniformed team. Staying in the service corridors, Dorothy made her way upward, using her intimate knowledge of the house's layout to avoid detection. When she reached the floor containing Maxwell's private suite, she encountered her first obstacle. An electronic keypad had been installed on the access door, a new addition since yesterday. Dorothy hesitated, then tried the service code all staff were given for emergencies. To her surprise, it worked. Apparently, in the rush to upgrade security, they had left the service override active. The corridor beyond was empty. Dorothy moved swiftly toward Maxwell's rooms, her sense of urgency growing. As she approached his private study, she heard voices inside and quickly ducked into an adjacent linen closet, leaving the door slightly ajar. Colin Winters emerged from the study with Victor, the security chief. Their conversation was tense. "Still no sign of it," Victor was saying. "We've searched his entire suite." "It has to be here," Colin insisted. "Harrison wouldn't risk keeping the evidence off-site. Keep looking, behind artwork, inside furniture, anywhere he might have hidden something. And if we find it, destroy it completely," Colin ordered. "Nothing can link Meridian to the heart-flow sabotage or the Swiss medication. The press conference is our only chance to get ahead of this situation." As they moved down the hallway, Dorothy heard a commotion from the floor below. James's distraction right on schedule. Victor's radio crackled with reports of a security breach in the main house, and both men hurried away to investigate. Dorothy quickly entered Maxwell's study, closing the door silently behind her. The room had been thoroughly searched, drawers left open, and paintings askew on the walls. Whatever Colin was looking for, he hadn't found it yet. She moved into the adjoining bedroom, which was similarly disturbed. No sign of Maxwell himself, but on the nightstand she noticed his phone and wallet. He wouldn't have left voluntarily without them. The bathroom was her last hope. As she entered, she immediately noticed the medicine cabinet hanging open, empty of the many supplements and medications Maxwell typically kept. On the counter, a single glass contained residue of a clear liquid. Dorothy's pharmacy training kicked in as she examined the glass without touching it. She detected a faint almond-like odor, potentially indicating certain sleeping medications, when combined with the pills she'd found in Colin's possession. A soft sound from the adjoining dressing room caught her attention. Dorothy froze, listening intently. It came again, a muffled thump as if something heavy had shifted. The dressing room was massive, with custom cabinetry and a center island of drawers. Nothing seemed immediately unusual, but as Dorothy moved deeper into the space, she noticed scuff marks on the floor near a section of paneling. Pressing against different panels, she found one that moved slightly under pressure. A hidden door swung inward, revealing a small panic room equipped with monitors, communications equipment, and a narrow bed. On that bed lay Maxwell Harrison, unconscious but breathing, an IV inserted in his arm connected to a bag of clear fluid. Dorothy rushed to his side, checking his pulse, slow but steady. His pupils were dilated when she lifted his eyelids, consistent with heavy sedation. She examined the IV bag, which was unlabeled. Based on Maxwell's symptoms and the setup, Dorothy suspected he was being kept deliberately sedated, likely with the same medication she'd found in Colin's possession. The monitors in the room displayed security feeds from throughout the mansion. Dorothy could see Colin in Maxwell's office, speaking urgently on the phone. In another feed, security teams were searching the grounds. James's distraction had apparently escalated. Dorothy knew she had minutes at most before they resumed searching Maxwell's suite. She couldn't move him alone in his condition, and she had no idea who among the household staff could still be trusted. On a desk in the corner of the panic room, a laptop sat open, the screen displaying an encrypted file manager. One folder was labeled simply Evidence with a note beside it, backup on James Chen's secure server. Suddenly the pieces aligned. James wasn't just helping her out of loyalty to Maxwell. He was directly involved in gathering the evidence about the Heartflow trial. The distraction downstairs wasn't just for her benefit. James was likely retrieving or protecting evidence of his own. Dorothy made a rapid decision. She couldn't help Maxwell escape in his condition, but she could ensure the evidence survived. Using the laptop, she accessed the files, finding comprehensive documentation of the Heartflow trial sabotage, including emails between Meridian Global executives discussing the planned acquisition of Harrison Pharmaceuticals after the trial failure. Most damning were records showing large payments to someone inside Harrison Pharmaceuticals under the code name Sentinel, the insider who had executed the sabotage. The identity was encrypted, but the evidence of conspiracy was clear. Dorothy quickly used her phone to photograph key documents, then searched for a way to secure Maxwell. The IV was keeping him sedated. Removing it would eventually allow him to regain consciousness, but not quickly enough. A cabinet in the corner contained emergency medical supplies. Dorothy found what she needed: a syringe and a vial of epinephrine, which could counteract some effects of sedatives. Her pharmacy training had never felt more valuable than in this moment. Carefully, she administered a minimal dose, enough to begin counteracting the sedation without causing dangerous side effects. Then she removed the IV entirely, applying pressure to stop the bleeding. Security feeds showed Colin and Victor returning to the suite. Dorothy had seconds to decide her next move. She quickly closed the hidden door to the panic room, hoping they wouldn't discover it immediately, and slipped back into the bathroom. There was no time to reach the exit. Her only option was to hide and hope for an opportunity to escape. The large linen cabinet provided her only concealment. Dorothy squeezed inside, pulling the door nearly closed as the main suite door opened. Through the small gap, she watched Colin and Victor re-enter the bedroom. The distraction downstairs was Chen, Victor reported. He accessed the main computer system briefly before security intercepted him, but he got away. Colin slammed his fist against the wall. Find him. He must have the backup evidence. Nothing can stop this acquisition. Too many people have invested too much. And Harrison? Victor asked. Colin checked his watch. The press conference is in 30 minutes. By then it won't matter. Once I announce his medical condition and my appointment as interim CEO, the board will have no choice but to proceed with the Meridian acquisition. And after that? Victor persisted. Colin's voice dropped to a near whisper, but Dorothy could still make out his words. After that, a regrettable accident. The security recordings will show Harrison, disoriented from his medication, falling from his balcony. Tragic, but not entirely unexpected given his recent erratic behavior. Dorothy suppressed a gasp. They were planning to murder Maxwell and make it look like suicide or an accident. Keep searching for that evidence, Colin instructed Victor. I need to prepare for the press conference. As they left the suite, Dorothy remained hidden, her heart pounding. The situation was far worse than she had imagined. Corporate espionage, sabotage, attempted murder, and now a planned assassination, all to facilitate a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. She had to act quickly. Maxwell was hidden but vulnerable in the panic room. James was somewhere on the grounds with evidence, and Colin's press conference would cement his takeover within the hour. Slipping out of her hiding place, Dorothy considered her options. She couldn't overpower armed security, and she couldn't move Maxwell alone. Her only advantage was information and the photographs of evidence on her phone. A plan began to form. Colin's press conference would have journalists present, people outside the conspiracy who could witness the truth if it were dramatically revealed. But she needed help, and there was only one person she could think of who might be both willing and able to assist: Dr. Sharma. Dorothy had overheard she had left town on a family emergency, But that could easily be a cover story, either self-protection or something worse. Using Maxwell's phone from the nightstand, Dorothy searched his contacts for Eliza Sharma, then sent a text from her own phone. "Dr. Sharma, this is Dorothy Johnson, Harrison household staff. Maxwell is in danger. Colin drugged him and plans to announce his medical leave at noon press conference before having him killed. I have evidence of heart flow sabotage and meridian connection. Please respond if you can help." It was a desperate move, potentially exposing herself to danger if Dr. Sharma was part of the conspiracy, but Dorothy had observed the doctor's genuine distress about the altered trial data, her concern for the patients who had died unnecessarily. If anyone would help expose the truth, it would be her. Dorothy checked the security feeds one last time before leaving the panic room, making sure the path to the service stairs was clear. Maxwell was beginning to show signs of the epinephrine taking effect: slight movement, increased respiration. It would be hours before he was fully conscious, but he was no longer in immediate medical danger. As she prepared to leave, Dorothy noticed a small safe in the corner of the panic room, partially concealed behind equipment. On a hunch, she tried the date she had seen in Maxwell's personal calendar, his late father's birthday. The safe opened, revealing a single USB drive labeled Sentinel Identity. This was what Colin had been searching for so desperately. Dorothy pocketed the drive, then carefully exited the panic room, ensuring the hidden door was fully closed behind her. As she reached the service stairs, her phone vibrated with a response from Dr. Sharma. "I'm hiding at the Cambridge Hotel downtown. Room 412. Security followed me home last night. Bring the evidence, hurry!" Dorothy made her way down the service stairs, avoiding the main areas of the mansion where security was concentrated. She reached the cellar and retraced her path through the old tunnel, emerging behind the pool house into the continuing rain. The gardening truck was still present at the service entrance, now unloading supplies. Dorothy used it as cover, keeping her head down as she made her way to the perimeter of the estate. Once beyond the gates, she hurried to her car parked several blocks away. As she drove toward downtown San Francisco, Dorothy called Maya's school, leaving a message that she'd be picking her up early due to a family situation. Whatever happened next, she wanted her granddaughter safely with her. The rain intensified as Dorothy approached the Cambridge Hotel, sheets of water reducing visibility on the crowded downtown streets. She found parking 2 blocks away and hurried through the downpour, constantly checking to ensure she wasn't followed. The Cambridge was an unassuming mid-range hotel, neither luxurious nor cheap, the perfect place to disappear temporarily. Dorothy took the stairs instead of the elevator, caution overriding convenience. At room 412, she knocked quietly in the pattern Dr. Sharma had specified in a follow-up text: 2 quick, 1 slow, 2 quick. The door opened immediately, revealing Eliza Sharma looking exhausted but alert. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, quickly ushering Dorothy inside. "Thank you for coming. Do you really have evidence?" Dorothy showed her the photos and the USB drive. "Maxwell is alive but sedated in a hidden panic room at the mansion. Colin didn't find him, but he's planning to announce Maxwell's medical leave at the press conference in..." She checked her watch. 15 minutes. "Doctor." Sharma connected the USB drive to her laptop, her eyes widening as she reviewed the contents. "This is it. Proof that Colin Winters is Sentinel. He personally falsified the heart flow trial data and arranged for the Swiss medication to be delivered to Maxwell." "There's more," Dorothy said, showing her the photos of documents linking Meridian Global to the sabotage. "The entire thing was orchestrated to devalue Harrison Pharmaceuticals for acquisition." "We need to stop that press conference," Dr. Sharma said urgently. "With Colin publicly established as interim CEO, the acquisition will proceed regardless of what evidence emerges later." "How?" Dorothy asked. "We can't just walk in there with security looking for both of us." Dr. Sharma thought for a moment, then smiled grimly. "We don't have to. The press conference will be live-streamed on the company website and social media. All we need is to get this evidence to at least one journalist in that room before Colin finishes speaking." She pulled out her phone. "I have a contact at the San Francisco Chronicle who's been investigating pharmaceutical corruption. She'll be covering the press conference." As Dr. Sharma made the call, Dorothy checked her messages. Nothing from James Chen, which worried her. Had he escaped with his copy of the evidence, or had security captured him? "It's arranged, Doctor," Sharma announced after a brief conversation. "My contact will create an opportunity for questions after Colin's statement. When she's recognized, We'll send her the files live during the broadcast. They turned to Dr. Sharma's laptop, where the company's live stream was just beginning. The camera showed the Harrison Pharmaceuticals logo backdrop, with Colin Winters approaching the podium, looking confident and appropriately solemn. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on such short notice," he began. "I have an important announcement regarding the leadership of Harrison Pharmaceuticals." As Colin spoke about Maxwell's supposed health issues and temporary leave of absence, Dorothy and Dr. Sharma prepared the evidence, organizing it for maximum impact when shared. And so, effective immediately, the board has appointed me interim CEO while Maxwell receives the care he needs, Colin continued. Additionally, I'm pleased to announce preliminary discussions with Meridian Global regarding a strategic partnership that will ensure stability during this transition period. The camera panned to show Catherine Reed of Meridian Global seated in the front row, her expression carefully neutral. "We'll now take a few questions," Colin said, gesturing to the journalists. "As planned, Dr. Sharma's contact was called on first, a sharp-looking woman who identified herself as Alyssa Chen from the Chronicle. Mr. Winters, sources suggest that the HeartFlow trial failure may have involved data manipulation. Has the company investigated these allegations?" Colin's composed expression flickered momentarily before he recovered. "Those rumors are completely unfounded. The trial data was verified by independent reviewers." "And yet," the journalist continued, holding up her phone which had just received their evidence, "I've just received documentation suggesting you personally altered trial results under the codename Sentinel as part of a coordinated effort with Meridian Global to devalue Harrison Pharmaceuticals for acquisition." The press room erupted in chaos as Colin's face drained of color. The camera caught Catherine Reed standing abruptly, moving toward an exit. "Those documents they must be fabricated," Colin stammered. "This is outrageous." "The documents include email correspondence between you and Meridian executives," the journalist pressed, "as well as financial records showing payments of over $10 million to an account linked to you." Security moved to end the press conference, but the damage was done. Live on camera, Colin Winters had been directly implicated in corporate espionage, fraud, and potentially attempted murder. In the hotel room, Dorothy and Dr. Sharma watched the fallout with grim satisfaction. "It's not over," Dr. Sharma warned. "Maxwell is still vulnerable, and there will be significant resistance from everyone implicated." Dorothy's phone rang, an unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Dorothy, it's James. Are you safe?" "Yes," she confirmed. "With Dr. Sharma, we just exposed Colin during the press conference." "I saw," James replied. "Listen carefully. Colin's security team is still at the mansion. Victor's loyal to whoever pays him. He won't give up easily. I'm sending trusted people to secure the estate and find Maxwell. He's in a hidden panic room off his dressing room," Dorothy explained. "I administered epinephrine to counter the sedatives, but he'll need proper medical attention." "I'll handle it," James assured her. "Where will you go now?" "It's not safe to return to your apartment. They know who you are." Dorothy hadn't considered that her home might no longer be safe. "I need to get my granddaughter from school first." "I'll send a security team to escort you," James said. "Don't go alone." As Dorothy ended the call, Dr. Sharma was already gathering her belongings. "We should move quickly. Once Colin realizes what's happened, he'll be desperate." "I need to get Maya," Dorothy insisted. "She's all I have." "We'll go together," Dr. Sharma decided. "My car is in the garage downstairs with fake plates, a precaution I took when I first suspected something was wrong." They left the hotel room separately, meeting in the underground garage. Dr. Sharma's nondescript sedan was indeed present, looking nothing like the luxury vehicle she normally drove. As they pulled out into the rain-soaked streets, news alerts began flooding their phones. The press conference scandal was breaking across all major outlets. Colin Winters had been detained for questioning, and Harrison Pharmaceuticals stock had been temporarily suspended from trading. "The board will be in chaos," Dr. Sharma observed, as she drove carefully through the heavy traffic. "Without Maxwell or Colin, there's no clear leadership." Dorothy was only half listening, her thoughts focused on Maya. Would her granddaughter be safe? Had she inadvertently placed her in danger by opposing powerful people with unlimited resources? They arrived at Maya's school just as classes were ending. Dorothy texted her granddaughter to meet them at the side entrance, away from the usual pickup area. Minutes later, Maya appeared, looking confused at the unexpected early dismissal. "Grandma, what's going on?" she asked, as she slid into the back seat. "And who's this?" "I'm Dr. Sharma, a colleague of your grandmother's," Eliza explained smoothly as she pulled away from the curb. "We need to get somewhere safe for a few hours while a situation at work is resolved." Maya's perceptive eyes narrowed. "This isn't about work, is it? Why are we in a stranger's car? What's happening?" Dorothy turned in her seat to face her granddaughter. "Maya, I need you to trust me right now. There's been a complicated situation at the Harrison estate, and until it's fully resolved, we need to be cautious." "Are you in trouble?" Maya asked directly, her voice small but steady. "No, sweetheart. In fact, I helped stop something very wrong from happening," Dorothy assured her. "But the people involved are powerful, and they're not happy about being exposed." As Dr. Sharma drove toward the highway, Dorothy noticed a black SUV several cars behind them, maintaining the same distance despite changing lanes. "I think we're being followed," she said quietly to Dr. Sharma, who glanced in the rearview mirror. "I see it," Dr. Sharma confirmed. "I know some evasive routes. Hold on." She made a sudden turn down a side street, then another, weaving through residential areas before emerging onto a different main road. The black SUV was no longer visible behind them. "Where are we going?" Dorothy asked. "I have a cabin in Marin County," Dr. Sharma explained. "Off the main roads, difficult to find without knowing exactly where to look. We can stay there until we hear from James that Maxwell is secure." Maya had fallen silent in the back seat, her expression a mixture of fear and confusion. Dorothy reached back and squeezed her hand reassuringly. "It's going to be okay," she promised. "This will all be over soon." As they crossed the Golden Gate Bridge, the rain finally began to subside, patches of blue appearing between the clouds. Dr. Sharma drove with focused precision, taking secondary roads and occasionally doubling back to ensure they weren't being followed. The cabin, when they finally reached it, was rustic but comfortable, nestled among redwoods with no neighbors in sight. As they settled inside, Dr. Sharma's phone rang. James Chen. She put the call on speaker so Dorothy could hear. "We've secured the mansion," James reported. "Maxwell is conscious but groggy. Medical team is with him now. Victor and most of the security team have been detained by federal agents." "Federal agents?" Dr. Sharma repeated in surprise. "Turns out Maxwell had been feeding information to the FBI about potential corporate espionage for months," James explained. "When the evidence went public during the press conference, they moved in immediately. Colin is in custody, along with Catherine Reed and several Meridian executives." "What about the company?" Dr. Sharma asked. "The board has called an emergency session for tomorrow," James said. "They're appointing an interim leadership committee until Maxwell is fully recovered. Dr. Sharma, they've specifically requested your presence." Dorothy felt a wave of relief wash over her. The immediate danger had passed, justice was in motion, and Maya was safe beside her. "When can we return home?" she asked. "Not yet," James cautioned. "The FBI wants to interview you both tomorrow about everything you witnessed. And Dorothy, Maxwell is asking for you specifically. He said something about honoring a deal you made." Dorothy smiled faintly, thinking of their agreement and the promised compensation that would secure Maya's college education. "Tell him I'll be there." After ending the call, Dorothy explained the situation to Maya as fully as she could, omitting only the most dangerous details. Her granddaughter listened intently, questions flowing as she processed the dramatic events. "So you basically saved a billionaire's life and exposed a huge corporate conspiracy?" Maya summarized, a note of pride entering her voice. "Grandma, that's incredible." "I just did what seemed right at the time," Dorothy said modestly. "Which is the definition of courage?" Dr. Sharma interjected with a warm smile. "Your grandmother made choices that many others wouldn't have, at significant personal risk." As evening fell, they prepared a simple meal from supplies in the cabin. The conversation shifted to lighter topics: Maya's college plans, Dr. Sharma's research interests, fond memories of Dorothy's daughter Caroline. In this peaceful moment, surrounded by towering redwoods with her granddaughter safe beside her, Dorothy allowed herself to believe that perhaps the worst was truly behind them. Tomorrow would bring interviews and explanations, but also resolution and the fulfillment of promises made. Little did she know that the most unexpected developments still awaited her, and that the events of the past few days would transform her life in ways she could never have imagined. Morning dawned clear and bright in the Marin County hills. shafts of golden sunlight filtering through the redwoods surrounding Dr. Sharma's cabin. Dorothy woke early, her body still operating on the schedule of someone accustomed to arriving at work, before the household stirred. She found Dr. Sharma already awake, sitting on the cabin's small deck with a cup of tea, speaking quietly on her phone. The doctor ended her call as Dorothy approached. "That was James," she explained. "The situation has stabilized somewhat. Maxwell is recovering well and insisting on meeting with the board this afternoon, despite his doctor's objections." "That sounds like him," Dorothy observed with a small smile. "Stubborn to a fault." "The FBI would like us at their San Francisco field office at 11, Dr. Sharma continued. "They've arranged security for the journey." Dorothy nodded, glancing back toward the cabin where Maya still slept. "And after that?" "After that, I believe your arrangement with Maxwell comes into play," Dr. Sharma said carefully. "He mentioned it specifically to James. Something about compensation and a letter of recommendation?" Dorothy hadn't realized Maxwell had shared the details of their deal with others. "Yes, we had an agreement. I didn't expect him to honor it so promptly, given everything that's happened." Dr. Sharma studied her thoughtfully. "Maxwell Harrison can be difficult and demanding, but he values loyalty above almost everything else. And you did far more than simply remain loyal. You saved his life and his company." By mid-morning, they were on the road back to San Francisco, accompanied by 2 unmarked FBI vehicles, one ahead and one behind. Maya had been quiet during breakfast, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. "What happens after the FBI interview?" she asked as they approached the city. "Can we go home?" Dorothy exchanged glances with Dr. Sharma. "I'm not sure yet, sweetheart. It depends on what the FBI says and what arrangements Mr. Harrison has made." The FBI field office was an imposing building in downtown San Francisco. They were escorted inside through a secure entrance bypassing the main lobby. Dorothy and Dr. Sharma were interviewed separately, each giving detailed accounts of what they had witnessed and learned over the past few days. Dorothy's interview was thorough but respectful. The agent seemed particularly interested in the timing of events and her decision-making process when discovering the tainted medication. "Your background as a pharmacy technician was crucial to recognizing the danger," one agent noted. "Without that specific knowledge, this might have ended very differently." After nearly 2 hours of questions and statement signing, Dorothy was reunited with Maya and Dr. Sharma in a comfortable waiting area. James Chen arrived shortly after, looking tired but relieved. "Maxwell is meeting with the board right now," he informed them. "He asked me to bring you to Harrison Pharmaceuticals headquarters once you're finished here." "All of us?" Dorothy asked, glancing at Maya. James nodded. "His specific instructions. And Dorothy, he's made some arrangements you should know about. Your apartment has been secured by a private security team he hired. They've verified it's safe, but he's suggested alternative accommodations for a few days until the media attention dies down." The implications of James's words struck Dorothy suddenly. Her involvement in exposing the conspiracy was not going to remain private. Her life and Maya's would be affected in ways she hadn't fully considered. As if reading her thoughts, James added gently, "The company's PR team has prepared a statement that protects your privacy as much as possible, but given the scale of what's happened, some exposure is inevitable." The journey to Harrison Pharmaceuticals headquarters took them through the financial district, where the gleaming tower that housed the company stood as one of the city's tallest buildings. They entered through a private underground garage, avoiding the cluster of media vans parked at the main entrance. A private elevator whisked them directly to the top floor, where Maxwell's executive suite occupied half the available space. The board meeting had apparently just concluded. Well-dressed executives were filing out of the main conference room, their expressions a mixture of shock, relief, and calculation. James led them past curious onlookers to Maxwell's private office. The billionaire was seated behind his desk, looking pale but alert. His personal physician hovered nearby, clearly unhappy with his patient's insistence on working so soon after his ordeal. "Dorothy," Maxwell said warmly as they entered, rising despite his doctor's protests. "And this must be Maya, thank you for coming." Dorothy was struck by the genuine gratitude in his voice, a marked contrast to the imperious employer she had known for years. "Mr. Harrison, you should be resting." "Plenty of time for that later," Maxwell dismissed, gesturing for everyone to sit. "We have important matters to discuss first." He turned to Dr. Sharma. "Eliza, the board has unanimously approved your appointment as Chief Research Officer. with an expanded budget and full autonomy to restart the heart flow project with proper oversight. We owe it to the patients who might have benefited from the drug had it not been sabotaged. Dr. Sharma looked momentarily stunned before composing herself. Thank you, Maxwell. I'll need to review the original trial data to determine how much was compromised. All resources will be at your disposal, Maxwell assured her before turning to James. The board has also approved your promotion to Chief Operating Officer. Your loyalty and quick thinking were invaluable. James nodded his thanks, seemingly unsurprised by the announcement. Finally, Maxwell addressed Dorothy. As for you, Mrs. Johnson, our agreement stands. With some modifications I believe you'll find favorable. He slid a folder across the desk toward her. Inside, you'll find documentation for a trust established in Maya's name, covering not just her undergraduate education, but graduate studies should she choose to pursue them. The signing bonus we discussed has been deposited in your personal account, effective this morning. Dorothy opened the folder with trembling hands. The figures she saw there were far beyond what they had discussed, enough to secure Maya's education at any institution in the world, with substantial funds remaining. This is too much, she protested softly. Our agreement was for far less. Maxwell shook his head. Our agreement was made before you risked your life to save mine and my company. I believe in appropriate compensation for exceptional service, Dorothy. He continued before she could object further. Additionally, there's a matter of your employment. As promised, I've prepared letters of recommendation, but I'm hoping you'll consider an alternative proposal. Dorothy looked up from the folder, curious despite herself. Harrison Pharmaceuticals is establishing a new patient advocacy and safety division, Maxwell explained. Given your background in pharmacy and your demonstrated commitment to ethical decisions, even at personal cost, I'd like to offer you the position of deputy director. The room fell silent as Dorothy processed his words. But I don't have a degree. My certification as a pharmacy technician expired years ago. The company will cover the costs of updating your credentials and any additional education you wish to pursue, Maxwell said smoothly. The role would involve oversight of patient safety protocols, ethics review of trial procedures, and liaison work with regulatory agencies, all areas where your particular perspective would be invaluable. He leaned forward, his expression serious. This isn't charity or excessive gratitude, Dorothy. It's sound business. You spotted what highly paid executives and researchers missed. You made difficult ethical choices when others looked the other way. That's exactly the mindset this company needs to rebuild its reputation. Maya, who had been listening intently, spoke up. Grandma, that sounds amazing. You'd be perfect for that role. Dorothy felt overwhelmed. In the space of a few days, she had gone from fearing the loss of her housekeeping position to being offered an executive role at one of the world's leading pharmaceutical companies. I would need time to consider, she said carefully. This is a significant change. Of course, Maxwell agreed. Take all the time you need. The position will remain open for you. He glanced at his watch. Now, there's one more thing we need to address, the public narrative of these events. The media is clamoring for statements, and while we've provided the basic facts, there's significant interest in the personal elements of the story. Dorothy tensed. I'm not comfortable with public attention. I understand, Maxwell assured her. However, controlling the narrative is crucial to protecting everyone involved. Our PR team has prepared a statement that acknowledges your role while respecting your privacy as much as possible. He handed her another document, a press release describing how a vigilant staff member with healthcare background had identified potentially dangerous medication and alerted appropriate parties, leading to the uncovering of corporate espionage. This doesn't name you specifically, Maxwell explained, but it acknowledges your contribution without sensationalizing the details. Dorothy read it carefully. The statement was tasteful and minimized her personal involvement while still conveying the essential truth. She nodded her approval. Thank you, she said sincerely. Maya's welfare and privacy are my primary concerns. Which brings me to a final point, Maxwell said, turning to Maya with unexpected warmth. Young lady, I understand you've been accepted to both Stanford and Berkeley with impressive scholarship offers. Maya nodded, surprised at being directly addressed. Yes, sir. I'm still deciding between them. Perhaps this might help your decision, Maxwell said, passing her a business card. Dr. Helen Chen, Director of Biochemical Research at our Cambridge facility, has a summer internship program for promising students interested in pharmaceutical development. She's a Stanford alumna herself and has connections to their biochemistry department. Should you choose that path, I've taken the liberty of recommending you for consideration." Maya's eyes widened. That would be incredible, thank you." As the meeting concluded, Dorothy found herself in a daze of conflicting emotions: gratitude, disbelief, lingering anxiety, and tentative hope for a future she had never imagined possible. In the elevator descending from Maxwell's office, Dr. Sharma spoke quietly to her. "For what it's worth, I think you should accept his offer. The company genuinely needs someone with your perspective, especially after what's happened, and the position would allow you to make a real difference in patients' lives." Dorothy smiled faintly. "I never expected any of this when I threw away that medication." The best changes in life often come from the moments when we simply do what's right without calculating the benefits, Dr. Sharma observed thoughtfully. When they reached the lobby, they found it mostly empty. Maxwell had arranged for them to leave through a private exit to avoid the media gathered at the main entrance. A car was waiting to take Dorothy and Maya to the temporary accommodations James had mentioned. As they prepared to part ways, Dr. Sharma embraced Dorothy warmly. "Whatever you decide about the position, I hope we'll stay in touch. I could use an ally who values ethics over expediency." The car took them to a luxury serviced apartment in a discreet building across town, a stark contrast to their modest Oakland home. The two-bedroom suite offered sweeping views of the bay, with a fully stocked kitchen and all possible amenities. "This is insane," Maya whispered as they explored the space, running her hands over expensive furnishings. "Are we really staying here?" "Just temporarily," Dorothy reminded her, though she too was overwhelmed by the opulence. That evening, as they ate dinner delivered from one of the city's finest restaurants, Maya finally asked the question that had been building all day. "Are you going to take the job, Grandma?" Dorothy set down her fork, considering carefully. "I don't know yet. It would be a complete change from everything I've known for the past 15 years. But you were a pharmacy technician before that," Maya pointed out. "This would be going back to your field, but at a much higher level." "That's part of what concerns me," Dorothy admitted. "I'm not sure I'm qualified, regardless of what Mr. Harrison believes." Maya's expression grew serious. "Grandma, you figured out that medication was dangerous when no one else did. You risked everything to save someone else's life. You helped expose people who were willing to hurt others for profit. I'd say that makes you exactly the kind of person who should be in that position." Dorothy looked at her granddaughter, so young yet so perceptive, and felt a surge of pride. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher," Maya replied with a smile. Later that night, as Maya slept in the luxurious bedroom, Dorothy stood at the window, gazing out at the city lights reflected in the bay. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Dorothy, it's Maxwell. One thing I forgot to mention today. The trust for Maya is established regardless of your decision about the position. Your actions have already earned that. The choice about your future is yours alone to make, with no obligation attached. Sleep well." The simple message, sent personally rather than through an assistant, spoke volumes. Perhaps Maxwell Harrison was more than just the demanding billionaire she had known all these years. Perhaps, like everyone, he was capable of growth and change when circumstances demanded it. Dorothy looked back toward the bedroom where Maya slept, then out at the glittering city once more. For 15 years, she had cleaned other people's homes, enabling their lives while putting her own dreams aside. She had done it without complaint, finding dignity in providing for her family through honest work. But now an unexpected door had opened, a chance to return to the field she had once loved, to use her knowledge to protect others, to rebuild a career she had thought forever lost. The prospect was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. As she finally prepared for bed, Dorothy made no firm decision. But for the first time in many years, she allowed herself to imagine a different future, one where she stepped out of the shadows of other people's lives and into a role where her voice would be heard and her judgment valued. Whatever she decided, she knew with certainty that the simple act of throwing away dangerous medication had set in motion changes that would reverberate through many lives, including her own, in ways she was only beginning to understand. 3 months later, Dorothy stood before the mirror in her new apartment, adjusting the collar of her blazer. The woman who gazed back at her seemed simultaneously familiar and foreign. The same eyes and face she had known all her life, now framed by a professional haircut and clothes, that spoke of authority rather than service. "You look amazing, Grandma," Maya said from the doorway, dressed in Stanford cardinal red. "Totally ready to intimidate some pharmaceutical executives." Dorothy laughed, relaxing slightly. "I think I'll aim for competent and approachable, rather than intimidating for my first major presentation." It had been a whirlwind few months. After careful consideration, Dorothy had accepted Maxwell Harrison's job offer, beginning as Deputy Director of the newly formed Patient Advocacy and Safety Division at Harrison Pharmaceuticals. The transition had been challenging. Moving from household staff to executive leadership required adjustments not just in skills, but in mindset. Maxwell had been true to his word, providing resources for Dorothy to update her pharmaceutical knowledge and learn the corporate aspects of the role. Dr. Sharma had become both mentor and friend, guiding her through the complex politics of the company as she established her department. Today marked a significant milestone. Dorothy would be presenting her department's new safety protocols to the executive committee, including Maxwell and the board of directors. Her recommendations would fundamentally change how the company approached clinical trials, emphasizing patient welfare over expedited timelines. "Will Mr. Harrison be there?" Maya asked, helping Dorothy gather her presentation materials. "Yes, but he's been very supportive of my work so far," Dorothy replied. "It's some of the other executives I'm more concerned about. Change is never easy, especially when it might impact profits in the short term." Maya gave her grandmother an encouraging hug. "You've got this. Remember, you stood up to a billionaire and a corporate conspiracy. A boardroom full of executives should be easy by comparison." Dorothy smiled at the simplification, but appreciated the sentiment. "How are your preparations for Stanford coming along?" "Almost done," Maya said excitedly. "Orientation is next week, and then I start the summer internship with Dr. Chen that Mr. Harrison arranged. I still can't believe all of this is happening." As they gathered their things to leave, Dorothy to headquarters, Maya to meet friends before her upcoming move to campus, Dorothy reflected on how dramatically their lives had changed. The trust Maxwell had established had allowed them to move to a spacious apartment closer to the city. Though Dorothy had insisted on something comfortable rather than extravagant, her new salary was many times what she had earned as a housekeeper, providing financial security they had never known. But the most profound changes weren't material. Dorothy had reclaimed a part of herself that had been dormant for 15 years. Her healthcare knowledge, her analytical abilities, her voice in professional settings. Maya had blossomed with the certainty that her educational future was secure, her academic confidence soaring as she prepared for Stanford. The media interest in the Harrison Pharmaceuticals scandal had eventually subsided, though the case against Colin Winters and his Meridian Global conspirators continued to work its way through the courts. As promised, Dorothy's identity had been protected in official statements, though within the company, her role in uncovering the plot was well known, earning her both respect and some wariness from colleagues. At Harrison Pharmaceuticals headquarters, Dorothy made her way to the executive floor, now her workplace rather than an area to be cleaned. Staff nodded respectfully as she passed, many still adjusting to seeing their former housekeeper in a leadership position. James Chen met her outside the boardroom, now fully settled into his role as COO. "Ready for your debut?" he asked with an encouraging smile. "As ready as I'll ever be," Dorothy replied, straightening her shoulders. "The board is impressed with your preliminary reports," James assured her. "Even the old guard who initially opposed your appointment have acknowledged the quality of your work." The boardroom was already filling with executives and directors when they entered. Maxwell Harrison sat at the head of the table, engaged in conversation with Dr. Sharma, who had successfully restarted the HeartFlow trial with proper oversight. He looked up as Dorothy entered, nodding in acknowledgement. As Dorothy set up her presentation, she noticed a few curious glances from board members who hadn't yet met her in person. She recognized the subtle evaluations happening, the assessment of whether a former housekeeper could possibly hold her own in this environment. Once everyone was seated, Maxwell opened the meeting. "Before we begin today's agenda, I want to formally welcome Dorothy Johnson in her first Executive Committee presentation. For those who may not be aware, Mrs. Johnson's background includes pharmaceutical experience that proved invaluable to this company during recent events. Her unique perspective bridges patient advocacy, pharmaceutical knowledge, and ethical oversight. Exactly what Harrison Pharmaceuticals needs as we rebuild trust with regulators and the public. The introduction was perfectly calibrated, acknowledging her unusual path without dwelling on it, emphasizing her qualifications rather than the dramatic circumstances of her appointment. Dorothy began her presentation with quiet confidence, outlining the comprehensive safety protocols her department had developed. She detailed new oversight mechanisms for clinical trials, independent verification processes for data, and direct channels for patient feedback that would be reviewed by her team rather than marketing or research departments. These measures will add approximately 8 weeks to our standard development timeline, she acknowledged directly, addressing the concern she knew would be foremost for many executives. However, our analysis indicates they will reduce adverse incidents by up to 30% and substantially decrease our regulatory risk. In the wake of recent events, demonstrating our commitment to patient safety isn't just ethical, it's good business. As she concluded her presentation, Dorothy braced for resistance. It came immediately from Gerald Foster, one of the company's longest-serving executives. "While these recommendations are admirable in theory, Mrs. Johnson," he began with barely concealed condescension, "I question whether someone with your limited experience in corporate pharmaceutical development fully appreciates the competitive pressures we face. Every week added to development timelines represents millions in lost potential revenue." Before Dorothy could respond, Maxwell interjected. "Gerald, Mrs. Johnson's limited experience includes identifying a contaminated compound that our entire research department missed, preventing potential deaths in our newest trial, and helping expose corporate espionage that nearly destroyed this company. I'd say that experience is precisely what we need." The rebuke was delivered calmly, but left Foster visibly uncomfortable. Dorothy appreciated the support, but didn't want to be perceived as needing protection. "Mr. Foster raises a valid concern about competitive pressures," she acknowledged, meeting his gaze directly. "However, the HeartFlow debacle cost this company billions in market value and nearly resulted in a hostile takeover. My department's function is to ensure we never face such a situation again. Prevention is always more cost-effective than crisis management." The discussion continued for nearly an hour, with Dorothy addressing questions and concerns with increasing confidence. By the time Maxwell called for a vote on implementing her recommendations, she had won over most of the skeptics through sheer competence and thoughtful responses. The protocols were approved unanimously, a significant victory for her fledgling department. As the meeting adjourned and executives began filtering out, Maxwell approached Dorothy. "Excellent work," he said sincerely. "You handled Foster better than I expected. He's been testing every new executive like that for 20 years. "Thank you for the support," Dorothy replied, "though I was hoping to stand on my own." "You did," Maxwell assured her. "I merely prevented him from dismissing you before you had the chance. The rest was all you." As they walked together toward Dorothy's office, Maxwell continued, "There's another matter I wanted to discuss with you. The HeartFlow trial is showing promising early results under Eliza's supervision. If the positive outcomes continue, we'll be seeking FDA approval within 18 months. "That's wonderful news," Dorothy said sincerely, thinking of the patients whose lives might be improved by the heart medication. "I assume my department will be involved in the submission process?" "Extensively," Maxwell confirmed. "But there's more. The board has approved a new initiative, a patient assistance program that will make our medications, including HeartFlow if approved, available at reduced or no cost to qualified individuals without adequate insurance coverage." Dorothy stopped walking, genuinely surprised. Harrison Pharmaceuticals, like most major pharmaceutical companies, had always prioritized profitability over accessibility. "That's unexpected," she admitted. "What prompted this change in philosophy?" Maxwell's expression grew more thoughtful than she had ever seen during her years working in his home. "Let's just say recent events provided clarity about what truly matters. I've spent decades building a company focused on innovation and growth, but nearly lost sight of why we developed these medications in the first place, to help people." He glanced at Dorothy with unexpected humility. "Sometimes we need someone from outside our bubble to remind us of fundamental truths. I'd like you to help develop this patient assistance program, ensuring it genuinely serves those in need rather than just generating positive PR." Dorothy felt a surge of emotion at the opportunity to create meaningful change for patients, like those she had once assisted as a pharmacy technician, people who often had to choose between medication and other necessities. "I'd be honored," she said simply. Later that evening, as Dorothy recounted the day's events to Maya over dinner in their apartment, her granddaughter listened with rapt attention. "So, your ideas are actually going to change how the whole company works?" Maya asked, impressed. "It's a beginning," Dorothy said modestly. "Changing corporate culture doesn't happen overnight, but Maxwell seems genuinely committed to a new direction. And now you're going to help create a program to make their medications more affordable?" Maya shook her head in amazement. "Grandma, do you realize how far you've come in just 3 months? From cleaning Maxwell Harrison's bathroom to influencing his company's entire ethical framework?" Put that way, the transformation did seem remarkable. "Life takes unexpected turns," Dorothy acknowledged. "I never imagined any of this when I made the decision to dispose of that medication." "That's what makes it so amazing," Maya insisted. "You didn't do it for reward or recognition. You just did what was right, regardless of the consequences to yourself." The conversation shifted to Maya's preparations for Stanford and her upcoming internship. As they talked, Dorothy felt a deep contentment she had rarely experienced. For years, her focus had been solely on survival and providing stability for her granddaughter. Now, for the first time, both of them were truly thriving. The next morning brought an unexpected development. As Dorothy arrived at her office, she found James Chen waiting for her, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Dorothy, there's something you should know before you hear it elsewhere," he began once they were seated with the door closed. "The federal investigation into Colin Winters and Meridian Global has expanded. They've uncovered evidence of similar sabotage attempts at other pharmaceutical companies." Dorothy frowned. "So this wasn't an isolated incident?" "Far from it," James confirmed. "It appears Meridian had a systematic strategy of devaluing potential acquisition targets by sabotaging their key drug trials. The FDA is reviewing all Meridian acquisitions from the past 5 years for similar patterns." "That's disturbing, but not entirely surprising," Dorothy observed. "What does this mean for Harrison Pharmaceuticals?" James hesitated before continuing. "The federal prosecutors want you to testify about what you observed. Your background in pharmaceuticals, combined with your direct observations, makes you a particularly valuable witness." Dorothy felt a flutter of anxiety. She had provided statements to investigators, but testifying publicly would be different, potentially exposing her to media attention she had carefully avoided. "I understand your concerns about privacy," James said, reading her expression. "Maxwell has already engaged the company's legal team to provide whatever support you need and to limit your exposure as much as possible." "I'll need to discuss this with Maya," Dorothy said thoughtfully. "Her Stanford term is about to begin, and I don't want this to disrupt her transition." "Of course," James agreed. "The prosecutors are willing to work with your schedule. And Dorothy, this testimony could help prevent similar situations at other companies, potentially saving lives." That consideration weighed heavily as Dorothy contemplated her options. If her testimony could prevent other pharmaceutical companies from falling victim to the same sabotage and protect patients from potentially dangerous medications, didn't she have a responsibility to speak up? Over the following weeks, Dorothy worked with the legal team to prepare for her testimony while continuing to develop both her safety protocols and the new patient assistance program. The work was challenging but deeply satisfying, drawing on both her pharmaceutical knowledge and her lived experience of financial hardship. Maya left for Stanford, settling into dormitory life with excitement and occasional homesickness. Their daily video calls became Dorothy's favorite part of each day, watching her granddaughter thrive in the academic environment she had always deserved. The day of Dorothy's testimony arrived with surprising calm. She had prepared thoroughly, understanding exactly what information was relevant and how to present it clearly. The federal courthouse was imposing, but Dorothy entered with quiet dignity, focused on the importance of her role rather than her own discomfort. As she took the witness stand, Dorothy caught sight of Maxwell Harrison sitting in the back of the courtroom, a silent gesture of support she hadn't expected. Her testimony lasted several hours, detailing her observations about the tainted medication, the conversations she had overheard, and the connections to the HeartFlow trial sabotage. The prosecutor handling her questioning was skilled at drawing out the narrative without sensationalizing it. Dorothy spoke with simple clarity, about what she had seen and heard, neither minimizing nor exaggerating the events. When asked why she had taken such risks to protect someone who was merely her employer, Dorothy gave an answer that would later be quoted in several news articles about the case. "I didn't see it as protecting my employer specifically. I saw a medication I recognized as potentially lethal, and preventing harm was the only ethical choice available. The fact that it uncovered a larger conspiracy was secondary to the immediate obligation to prevent harm." As she left the courthouse, a small group of reporters called out questions, but security escorted her to a waiting car. Maxwell joined her a few minutes later, sliding into the seat beside her as the car pulled away. "You were excellent in there," he said with genuine admiration. "Clear, precise, unimpeachable." "Thank you for coming," Dorothy replied, surprised by how much his presence had steadied her. "It wasn't necessary." "Perhaps not," Maxwell acknowledged. "But you've stood by this company through extraordinary circumstances. The least I could do was stand by you today." The conversation shifted to company matters as they returned to headquarters, both more comfortable discussing business than acknowledging the unusual bond that had formed between them, a relationship that defied easy categorization, having evolved from employer-employee to something more complex and equal. That evening, Dorothy video-called Maya to report on the day's events. "The newspaper's website already has an article about your testimony," Maya reported excitedly. "They don't use your name, just a former healthcare worker employed by Harrison Pharmaceuticals, but they quote you about making ethical choices." Dorothy Johnson, a 52-year-old maid with a background as a pharmacy technician, works at billionaire Maxwell Harrison's mansion to support her granddaughter Maya's college dreams. While cleaning Maxwell's bathroom, she discovers expensive Swiss medication that she recognizes as a dangerous compound, similar to one pulled from the market years ago after causing deaths. Making a split-second decision during a security camera maintenance window, Dorothy disposes of the medication, risking her job to potentially save Maxwell's life. When confronted, she admits what she's done, explaining her pharmaceutical background and concerns about the medication's safety. Instead of firing her, Maxwell reveals he had the medication tested after she disposed of it and confirms it would have killed him. He offers Dorothy a deal, double her salary, plus a substantial bonus if she helps him uncover who might be trying to harm him. Dorothy discovers that Colin Winters, the CFO of Harrison Pharmaceuticals, is sabotaging the company's valuable heart drug trials to devalue the company for acquisition by rival Meridian Global. The same compound that was in Maxwell's medication was used to sabotage the trials, causing patient deaths and regulatory rejection. When Maxwell is drugged and hidden away before a critical board meeting, Dorothy teams up with research director Dr. Eliza Sharma to expose the conspiracy. Using her knowledge of the mansion and pharmaceutical background, Dorothy finds Maxwell in a hidden panic room and discovers evidence linking Colin to the sabotage. Dorothy and Dr. Sharma managed to expose Colin during a live-streamed press conference by sending evidence to a journalist, preventing the hostile takeover of the company. Federal authorities move in to arrest the conspirators. In recognition of her actions, Maxwell creates a trust to fully fund Maya's college education and offers Dorothy a position as deputy director of a new patient advocacy and safety division at Harrison Pharmaceuticals, utilizing her pharmaceutical background and ethical decision-making. 3 months later, Dorothy has successfully transitioned to her executive role, implementing new safety protocols across the company. Her testimony helps prosecutors uncover a larger pattern of pharmaceutical sabotage affecting multiple companies. Maxwell, influenced by Dorothy's ethical example, establishes a patient assistance program to make the company's medications more affordable to those in need. The previously sabotaged heart drug is restarted under proper oversight, potentially saving countless lives. The story concludes with Dorothy finding unexpected fulfillment in her new role, Maya thriving at Stanford with her future secure, and Maxwell's company transformed by Dorothy's influence toward more ethical practices. The simple act of disposing of dangerous medication ultimately changed not just Dorothy and Maya's lives, but potentially the lives of thousands of patients who will benefit from both safer drug trials and more accessible medication.